Welcome second grade to Tuesday. We're going to do math first, and I hope you all had good luck with your math yesterday. We're working on our multiplying again. We took a little break from it to work on three-digit subtraction. Now we're going back to working on our multiplication again. So this is the worksheet for today is 229 to 230, and we'll be doing multiplying with 2. Okay, so in the beginning, I just want to review with you. Math is so awesome. It's like a whole nother language. Okay, so we have all these cool words that help us, and we learn it like we're learning to speak another language. Now, when we're using numbers in multiplication, the two numbers that we're multiplying times each other are called the factors. And the answer that we come up with is called the product. Okay? So here's some pictures that show multiplication problems. 2 times 3 and 3 times 2, and their product is 6. Okay, so these are related multiplication facts. You can tell 2 times 3 and 3 times 2. Those are what are called related multiplication facts, and they each have the same product. The factors are just written in a different order. Okay, and you can picture them differently. All right. Now, let's just get out the worksheet and work a few problems together, all right? The worksheet gives you this multiplication example and then asks you to picture what's happening. Okay, so let's do that together. We have 4 times 2, and we want to picture the equation and then solve it. So we're going to make 4 sets, because it tells us right there. So let's make 4 sets. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be our 4 sets. How many are in each one of our sets? That's what this number tells us. 4 sets of 2. And this is how we picture the equation. 4 sets of 2. 4 times 2 equals, and how do we solve that? You may count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You may count by twos. 2, 4, 6, 8, right? And the longer we do this, you'll just memorize it. Eventually you'll just glance at that, 4 times 2, and you'll know that's 8. So you're going to picture the equation and you're going to solve the equation. Now, something that you're going to notice when you're doing multiplying with 2 is that it's going to remind you of facts that you've done before, addition facts that you've done before. This says 6 times 2 equals, and then it's asking you to fill in what doubles addition can that remind you of, okay? 6 times 2 equals, we can solve that together, 12. 6, 2 times 6 plus 6 equals 12. This is doubles addition. I know when we used to play teachers out the door, the doubles addition, you guys were the fastest at. So you need to remember that doubles addition, it shows up the same thing, it's just in multiplication now. So like we said, we're adding to our language, we're adding to our math abilities, and now we know that 6 plus 6 is 12. Also, 6 times 2 is 12. Okay? So those are things that are happening on the front of your worksheet. Oh, let's add this back in. Let's look at a few things that will be on the bottom of your worksheet, or on the back of your worksheet. They're just asking you they're going to ask you to skip count by twos, which you're good at. And then they're asking you to write the related multiplication fact. So for example, this is number 7. On the back, it says that 2 times 8 equals 16. 2 times 8 equals 16. And then they ask you, write the related multiplication fact. So they're not just asking for any multiplication fact that equals 16. They're asking for the related multiplication fact, which is using these same factors but in a different order. 8 times 2 equals 16. 2 times 8 equals 16. 8 times 2 equals 16. This What they're just introducing you to is a fancy math concept that you'll keep learning about even as you go into upper grades. It's a math law, actually, that A times B equals B times A. Okay, so you'll do that a few times. And then the very bottom, as a review thing, they're going to give you some digits. 5, 3, 7. And then they want you to look using only these numbers. What's the biggest number you can make and what's the smallest number you can make? Okay, so or greatest or least. If you're using only these numbers, the biggest number you could make, you'd want to use the biggest number first in the hundreds place, right? And the next biggest number in the tens place. There you go. And this would be the greatest number you could make using these digits. You want to use the same kind of thinking to make the least. Let's take the smallest number and put it in the hundreds place. And so we want to kind of follow that same pattern to make the least possible number, right? So this is the greatest number you can make with those digits. This is the least number you can make with those digits. And they have several of those for you to do. We've done it in the past, but we're reviewing. So I want to remind you how that works. So when we multiply with 2, they're showing you, reminding you that these numbers here are called the factors. What it comes up to is the product. When you're using the same factors, then it's called a related multiplication fact. And when you are multiplying with 2, it can remind you of doubles, addition. If you turned this, 2 times 8 equals 16, into doubles addition, you'd have 8 plus 8 equals 16. Okay, so those are the things you're going to be working on in your homework today, which is page 229 to 230. In history, we've been learning about the first 13 colonies, and we're coming to the end of that chapter. We've been reading about it for a while, all the different details of the different places where colonists first came and settled. So in your history book today, you're going to read pages 152 and 153. They face each other in the book, just like this. This is really good collection of information about all the things we've been learning about so far. And on this page, they collected it in a chart, and on this side of the page, it's a map. So I want you to read all the information and notice these details, and I think you'll enjoy reading it because it's going to remind you, oh, we read that, weeks ago, but I'd forgotten about it. Maybe something about the very first colonies or the middle colonies, okay? And then this also talks about just different details of each colony. Then you are going to use the information that you got on those pages to fill in your homework, okay? Now your homework has a chart and some questions, and it tells you very clearly what to do. Use the map to answer these questions, use the chart to answer these questions. So read the instructions and then follow them carefully. Use your textbook, and this is going to be a really good beginning of review of the whole chapter. That's what we'll spend this week doing, is just getting ready, reviewing what we've learned so far so that we can take a quiz at the end of the week on Friday when we do our quizzes to finish out this chapter and get ready for the next one. For English, we're beginning a new chapter, a new concept about writing an instructions paragraph. So we've talked about writing a paragraph before, the different parts of a paragraph, how it needs to be indented, how it has a topic sentence and details and a closing sentence. Now we're going to be working on writing a specific type of paragraph, which is a paragraph that gives instructions. Right? Instructions are important. We can be given instructions just with someone saying it. We can read instructions written down. And instructions are important because they tell you how to do something. One of the ways that instructions are important is that they need to be clear and easily understood. If you just tell someone how to do something but just run it all together, maybe not even in the right order, someone's going to have a hard time doing things in the right steps and having the right end product. Correct, right? So we're going to talk about one of the ways that we're going to make sure our instructions, when we write our paragraph eventually, make sure our instructions are really clear. We're going to talk about time, order, words. They're one of the best ways to make sure that your instructions are making sense and they're clear and easy to follow. Some examples of time order words are first, second, then, right? And when you put instruction time order words in a paragraph, they'll look like this. First, let me put a comma. First, you could say second. See the comma? You could say next, then. These are all time order words. Last, finally, okay? These are all time order words that you could use in your instructions. You'll be choosing which ones to use when you give your own instructions in a paragraph. And I want you to listen carefully to me now as I give you instructions, okay? I need you to take out a blank piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, and I want you to follow my instructions. And let's see if I can give you really good, clear instruction. You can follow them. And then at the end of this, I want you to take a photo of what you drew following my instructions. And on your picture that you drew on that photo, I also want you to write down what time order words you heard me use in my instructions. All right, are you ready? Blank piece of paper and a pencil, and let's go. Today I'm going to tell you how to draw one of my favorite characters. First, you will draw a circle. Next, you will draw triangles for ears. Next, draw ovals for eyes. Then you're going to draw a shape on the head. First, it looks like a Z, then it has a little swirl like a fancy G. Okay? Next, draw a mouth. Finally, finish the eyes. And very last, you should get a pink and color your character. These instructions tell you how to draw a character I really like named Jigglypuff, right? So now I want you to follow the instructions, draw this character, and then listen. Having listened to my instructions, I want you to write down any time order words you heard me use on your paper. Take a photo of it and turn it in. We have a new spelling list this week that I'd like you to spend the week reviewing and studying, doing your worksheets, and also some days I'll ask you just to copy down the list of words so that you're ready for a spelling test on Friday. Now our list 26 is all the pattern words have an ah sound in them, but they're not all spelled the same. So I'm going to write a few. We have all. You can hear the ah. In this word, the ah is made by an A. We have the word talk. You hear it again, ah, and it's an A. A's are so interesting. A's can say ah and A and ah. We have saw, again an A. And we have lots of words that are like this. Dog, long. And in this case, the ah is the O. Okay, so the pattern words all have a similar sound, but their spelling is very different. So sometimes the patterns may mean the spelling is really similar. In this case, the spelling is going to be different, but you're going to notice the same ah sound. That's the pattern. Our review words are saddle and little. Those are from just last week. And then memory words that you just have to memorize because they don't necessarily follow rules are above, love, and about. Right? So you're going to take a look in your spelling workbook for page 102. I would like you to do the word sort. I want you to notice, I love that they always start with the word sort because it helps you notice all the different patterns and ways to spell while making a similar sound. You'll get to work on your memory words and your review words, and I'd like you to turn this in. We're doing our reading now, and we're going to open up our story. We read part 1 of our story about Tansy and Granny Nell and the dulcimer, the old-timey instrument that Granny Nell uses to play folk music. That's the story we've begun, and now we're going to start on part 2 of that story. There are some vocabulary words I want you to listen for in this story. Clinic, competition, honeysuckle, and winding. Okay? Now, let's just remember, let's refocus and remember a little bit about what did we read so far. Where does Granny Nell live? Do you remember this setting when we began the story? She lives in a cabin in the woods. Okay? And how did Tansy find Granny Nell's cabin? Do you remember? Tansy is in the woods and she's playing, and then she hears music and she follows the sound of that music and she gets to meet Granny Nell. And I already said this, but do you remember the name of the instrument that she is playing? A dulcimer. And I think the description is very interesting in the story about how Granny Nell plays this instrument. It sounds like there are strings to it, but she plays it with a feather and a rock or a piece of bone or something like that. It sounds very interesting, not something that I'm familiar with. So I'm really glad that we're getting to read this story together and also getting to learn about this instrument. Granny Nell and Tansy have in common that they really love music. And I know you guys love music. I always think one of my favorite parts of our time together are times when we're learning a song or singing a song together. And so maybe that's part of why I like this story, because it's about music. Okay, let's begin reading together on page 139. I want you to have your book with you so that you're reading along with me, and we're getting our reading brain stronger, okay? Summer on Shady Mountain. All summer long, Tansy climbed the back trail to Granny Nell's cabin. The noisy blue jay grew used to her visits. He no longer scolded Tansy when she ran across the log. Tansy whistled at him happily. "Morning, Blue," she called as she hurried past his tree. At the cabin, Tansy found Granny in the kitchen making tea. "Fetch the dulcimer and take it outside, Tansy. I'll be right out," she said. "Oh, play church in the wildwood, Tansy," Granny said, sitting down in the other rocker. She tapped her foot in time to the music and nodded to herself as the notes faded. "I have never seen anyone learn to play the dulcimer as fast as you have. The good Lord has given you a gift, Tansy. Make sure you use your gift well." "The animals don't come when I play," said Tansy. "Give them time," Granny said, smiling. "They'll come around soon enough." "Mom says that you play at the Shady Mountain Fair," Tansy said. "She says you always win the music competition." Granny nodded. "Well, so far I have. The extra money helps me pay the taxes on my land." She looked around at the honeysuckle vines, heavy with sweet-smelling flowers. She looked out across the valley to the blue, misted mountains. "I hope I never have to leave my mountains," sighed Granny. Then she shook her head as if to clear it of gloomy thoughts. "Let's go take a walk before you go home." Tansy took many more walks with Granny Nell. Each day, Granny showed her something new about life on the mountain. One day, it was a pale, speckled egg from a blue jay's nest. The next day, it was a tiny wildflower, almost hidden under the damp leaves. One afternoon, Tansy skipped up the trail and stopped by the log to watch the running water. Whistling for Blue as usual, she started across the log. On the other side, she stopped. She looked around her. There was no cheerful answering whistle. Puzzled, she whistled again. There was a sudden flash of blue, and the little blue jay dashed about her head. He was scolding loudly. "What's wrong with you?" Tansy said, ducking her head. Blue flew up the trail, still scolding. "All right, I'm coming." Tansy ran to keep up with her. "Granny Nell," she called as she ran around the corner of the cabin. Granny Nell was sitting in her rocker. She looked up, her face white with pain. "What's wrong?" gasped Tansy, stopping to catch her breath. "I slipped on the way to the spring," Granny explained. "I hit a rock when I fell, and I think my arm is broken." "I will get Mom," said Tansy. "We will bring the car back." Mrs. Ledford was in the kitchen when Tansy ran into the house. "What's wrong?" Mrs. Ledford asked. "Granny is hurt," exclaimed Tansy. "We need to take her to the doctor." They drove over the bumpy, winding road to Granny's cabin. It took over an hour to get Granny to the clinic. Tansy and her mother waited until the doctor finished with Granny's cast. "Now you stay with us for a few weeks," Mrs. Ledford said. "Oh, no," said Granny. "I couldn't do that." "Yes, you can, Granny," Mrs. Ledford smiled. "You are always welcome in our home." "Please, Granny," Tansy pleaded. "Oh, all right," said Granny slowly, "if you are sure I'll not be in the way." "You won't be," both Tansy and her mother answered. So, how has Tansy spent her whole summer? What did we learn in this story that we just read? She's been visiting Granny Nell. And what has she been learning to do while she's there? She's learning to play the dulcimer, right? In the beginning of the book, she didn't know. The beginning of this story, she didn't know. And now, after spending the summer with her, she can play songs. What are the clues that Tansy discovers that make her think something must be wrong when she's going to visit Granny Nell? Well, usually when she goes, she always whistles and the bird whistles back. But this time the bird isn't there. And then when the bird does come, he seems very upset and like he wants Tansy to follow. So it's interesting. Granny Nell and Tansy both seem very, very good with nature and animals, and they're really noticing what's happening around them. And how do you know that Mrs. Ledford and Tansy care about Granny Nell? What are things that show up in this story that you can draw the conclusion that, yeah, they care about her? Well, Tansy checks in with her and spends time with her all the time. But when they realize she's hurt, they pick her up and they take her to the doctor, even though it takes a long time to get there. Because remember, they live in the mountains, so maybe they said it's a windy, bumpy road. They wait with her till she's done at the doctor, and then they invite her to come stay at their house until she feels better. And so I like that. I like that they're showing that they want to be a good friend and be there for her, even while, if she has her arm in a cast, that means she did break it, and she'll probably need help, won't she, for a while. So I'm looking forward to finding out what happens next. Thank you for reading with me today. I'd like you to do your worksheet. The front side is about comprehension to help you really understand what we read in the story so far. And the back side is more of a phonics page. It's about a bossy R and how the R can influence what the words sound like. So get your worksheet done and turn it in.